spokespeople, what I'd ask is if you could please use the raise hand if you're able to do so. And I will also be hitting the record to go when we've kind of got things moving a little bit. So I'm just doing a little bit of intro stuff right now, and I'm also giving a chance for some of the other media to join us because there are a few people who are still in the waiting room and just logging in. So again, what I'm asking is if you could please just use the raise hand. I will ask questions at the end to see if there's someone who has questions that I didn't see, in which case take yourself off camera and just wave at me and I'll try to see you. It's just the raised hand is a great tool because it puts you right to the top of my screen. With so many open windows, it's hard to tell. The other thing I wanted to flag with you is if you are having trouble for whatever reason and you just need to use the chat, you can do that too, and I will do my best to monitor the chat to see if there's any posts coming in there. And finally, if there's anyone who is just calling in, I will periodically ask if there's anyone just calling in who, has any questions that we haven't covered yet. So that's sort of the general approach to how we're going to do this. And then at the end, I will open it up for questions again for any of our spokespeople to see if there's questions you want to ask. But just keep in mind that all these people have a lot of demands on their time, so I can't guarantee you 100% that they can stay all the way to the end. So if you do have questions for different agencies, after they give their updates, that's the time to try to ask them, if you wouldn't mind. The only other thing is if everybody could please mute if you're not speaking. You're welcome to keep your cameras on, it's just that the mute makes it easier so we don't have any sound coming from elsewhere. All right. Giving it a moment, we've got a couple other people who are joining. All right, I'll go ahead and start introducing some of our speakers. We're just getting one more person signed in here. Yep, we will absolutely allow recording. Oh. Okay.
Recording in progress.
All right. So I am going to be resetting our recording here as well. And I'll start introducing, we're just having our EOC director here is trying to log in, so he's going to be on shortly. I'm just going to introduce everybody else for now. I'll start by introducing Hannah Swift, who is here with BC Wildfire to speak to you about the status of the fire response. I have two representatives here from the District of Taylor. There's Moira Green, who's our Chief Administrative Officer. If you want to give a little wave of your hand, Moira. There we go. And I have Ryan Gallay, who is their EOC Director. Thanks, Ryan. I also have another Ryan here, Ryan Harvey from Fort St. John. He's going to be able to give us an update on where things are at with the city. And we have Shona Nelson here from Doig First Nation, who is able to give us an update on theirs. So I thought it would be easiest again if we started, when our EOC Director is able to join in, I'll introduce Mike as well. But to keep things moving, if we could actually ask Hannah, if you don't mind going ahead, to give everybody a bit of an update.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Therese. So my name is Hannah Swift, and I am the Fire Information Officer working at the North Peace Complex here in Fort St. John. So our incident management team continues to manage and resource 4 fires within the vicinity of the Fort St. John area, which includes the Red Creek Wildfire, the Cameron River Wildfire, the Stoddart Creek Wildfire, and the Boundary Lake Wildfire. So those are the 4 I will be giving updates on today. Just one note before I get started on updates on that, the Donnie Creek Wildfire, which is quite a bit north from here, south of Fort Nelson, there is an incident management team that is taking over the management of that fire now as well. So I'll just go over a bit of the resources that we have on site right now as an overview. So we do have approximately 400 personnel assigned to this complex at this time. So that includes around 240 firefighters, as well as 75 structure protection firefighters. We also have 40 incident management team and support staff working here at the Incident Command Post in Fort St. John, supporting all our staff in the field. We also have 22 pieces of heavy equipment and operators, as well as 22 helicopters assigned to the incident. And all of those resources are shared between those fires, and they are redirected and placed in areas where there are most values at risk and based on forecasts and what we're looking at. So we can move the resources around as required.
Not too bad. It's good. Yesterday we were what, above 80, right?
Thank you. We had one additional unit crew join us last night. So that's 20 additional firefighters that went out and did a night shift last night as soon as they arrived. We have 2 additional unit crews arriving this afternoon, as well as another one arriving tomorrow. So it is still a fluid situation, but we do have more resources arriving by the hour. With our structure protection personnel, over the coming days, we are bolstering the structure protection branch. So we are increasing resources and we're increasing their night shift staffing, as well as expanding their operational periods. So we're having more coverage later into the evening and then through the night. So we do have personnel on these fires, 24/7 coverage. Just a little bit of an overview of the weather to go over what we saw yesterday on site. We are still seeing unseasonably hot and dry conditions, and we are still seeing fire behavior that is very aggressive during the peak burning windows. So around 2 o'clock yesterday, as was expected, the forecast, it did shift and we saw those northerly winds coming in. And so we did see predominant fire growth to the south and to the southwest. And that's a result of later in the evening, we had a further wind shift as the cold front passed through, and we had winds more out of the northeast, which was positive for the people within the vicinity of Fort St. John as the fire grew to the southwest, which is away from the city of Fort St. John. Our projections had shown that those winds would be sustained for longer, driving the fire directly south and even potentially southeast. So that was why one of the recommendation was made as a precautionary measure for the city of Fort St. John to put on that alert. Our projections were showing the growth would be more in the southeast direction, but again, it was predominantly to the southwest, and that's the Stoddart Creek wildfire. So today on site, we actually do have a bit of a reprieve. We have a mix of sun and clouds, but we have much lower temperatures than we've seen over the last week. We're seeing about temperatures in the low 20s, mid 20s, and our relative humidities are much higher than they have been. So we're having a shorter window where we have crossover happening. And what crossover means is when we have temperatures higher than our relative humidities. And so when we have crossover, it's usually in the late afternoon, and that is when we see very aggressive fire behavior and peak burning. So today we're going to see a shorter duration of that. So that's really positive for our staff in the field today. In addition, we are seeing much calmer winds. So we're seeing winds from the northeast still, but they are only 10 to 20 kilometers per hour at this time. And yesterday we were seeing winds gusting up to 60 kilometers per hour. So a bit of a reprieve for 24 hours, but by Wednesday and into Thursday, we do have an upper ridge tracking just north of BC. And so it's going to bring back those abnormally hot and very dry weather conditions to the region. So our big focus today is to get our feet back under us and reassess where we can safely place the crews to make progress on containing some of those lines while we have this 24-hour window. Yesterday in the afternoon, we did have to pull crews off the fire line as it was no longer safe for them to be in the areas where they were working. It was a tactical pause. It doesn't mean we completely disengaged from fighting the fire. We took a moment, we reassessed with achievable objectives where our crews could safely work. So we did have, and this is the Stoddart Creek wildfire that I'm talking about, we did have 48 firefighters remain overnight working southeast and southwest of the Stoddart Creek wildfire, and they were working with our structure protection personnel to set up structure protection where was possible. So for the most part, they worked along Highway 97 corridor, just protecting properties in that area. So we are continuing with structure protection assessment and applying structure protection in that area. We did see the fire cross Highway 97 yesterday evening. So as many of you know, Highway 97 was closed last night. We did reopen it around 10:30, 11 in the evening, and that was for one-way alternating traffic. And we kept that open just for evacuees in the area so that they could get out safely, as well as for our emergency response personnel. So again, the objectives on site today are to get a better idea of where the fire perimeter is at this time. We have been able to capture that data. So the Stoddart Creek right now is estimated to be 23,500 hectares in size. And we are looking at some areas south of the fire and east of the fire flank where we're able to put in some containment lines and make some progress there. So we're looking at forward planning for the next 72 hours to be able to get our crews back out there and achieve some objectives in front of the fire where our crews can safely do that. Now, moving on to the Red Creek wildfire. This one we had mapped yesterday at just under 3,000 hectares, so just shy of 3,000. And as a result of the heavy smoke that we had in the area, it was unclear whether or not the guards had held in the south and to the southwest, which is where the winds were predominantly pushing the fire. So it was a good test to those control lines. And I've heard reports back from operations that those control lines were not breached on that fire. So 60-kilometer winds from the north with the cold front coming through and erratic weather and the hot, dry conditions, that's a pretty good test for that wildfire to see if it will hold, if those containment lines will hold. So we're feeling very confident about that one. That's a good news story. With the Red Creek wildfire, we didn't see any growth, even with the extreme weather that we had yesterday. So we do still have crews on that fire. We have 62 firefighters continuing to patrol and mop up and tidy up all the areas so that we really feel confident in this one. But again, there was no growth yesterday, so that's good news there. Moving on to the Cameron River wildfire. That one I do not have a new size on, but I can tell you about what happened there yesterday. So in the afternoon when we got those 60-kilometer winds come through, we saw some spotting from the middle of the fire. So the spotting that occurred was from well within the fire guard where it had been contained. And the spotting, what that means is it lifted burning fuel up and over the guard that was in place. And so it created new small spot fires outside of the guard that was in place, which can be hard for our crews to chase when they're not ready for a new start outside of the guard that was already there. So we did have some a blowout in the northwest and the southwest corners of that fire, and that prompted the tactical evacuation that took place yesterday evening. So we do have 44 crews out there again today, and they are cleaning up and corralling the northwest and southwest corners. We of course have air support. As I mentioned before, we have those 22 helicopters assigned to the incident, so they're supporting our crews on the ground to tamper any aggressive fire behavior that we're seeing. The last fire we're managing here at the North Peace complex is the Boundary Lake wildfire. That one is being held status, which means that it's not likely to spread beyond predetermined boundaries under prevailing conditions. We do still have 30 firefighters working that fire and patrolling the edges. We've had aerial scans done so that we know where the heat mapping is. And so that one, again, it's still being held even after those winds. So that one's in really good shape at this time. As far as recommendations on any changes to alerts and orders, given the aggressive activity that we saw yesterday, we are having our fire behavior specialist work on some modeling to see the growth projections within the next 72 hours. So once we have that data and once we see, have a better idea of how things are looking out there and how our crews are feeling about the objectives that can be achieved in the next 72 hours, then we'll have a better idea of what sort of recommendations to make on the alerts and orders in the future. One last thing, there was a lot of smoke in the area yesterday. That was from the Donnie Creek wildfire that was that's north of us here, as well as from the fires burning across the border to our neighbors in Alberta. And so there was a lot of heavy smoke throughout the entire Prince George Fire Center. So that was impacting the city of Chetwynd as well as Dawson City. So hopefully that's dissipated now. But if there's concern there, and I understand where the concern comes from. It can be quite scary when it looks like it's midnight at 4 in the afternoon, but that's dissipated now, and there's no risk to Dawson City or Chetwynd at this time. And that's all I have, so I'll hand it back to you, Therese.
That's super. Thank you so much, Hannah. We have a question already from Richard Zussman. Richard, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, Hannah, I'm just trying to get a sense of when that forecast is going to be completed in terms of the modeling and the updates around the alerts. And would you describe the situation in Fort St. John as better today than it was yesterday?
So the recommendation that we made for the city of Fort St. John to issue an evacuation alert was based on the modeling that we had 24 hours ago. And that was based on those very strong winds from the north gusting up to 60 kilometers an hour. So when you mix that with the dry conditions and the heat that we've seen, it was a precautionary measure, because if we had gotten winds as were predicted from the northwest, then we would have seen that fire grow to the southeast, which would be in the direction of Fort St. John. So very precautionary. And so, yes, I would say we're in better shape today than we were yesterday, certainly, now that we have hunkered down and made it through that extreme wind event.
And
Thank
any
you.
timing on when that new forecast may be done? The one you mentioned, they're working on the modeling right now.
Yeah, so the modeling is being done, but in combination with that, we also rely on our operations in the field, the eyes in the sky, and the people on the ground. So once we get all those inputs together, it's based on multiple factors, not just necessarily the projections. So we're going to continue to work with our partners and all the communities impacted to get that information to them as soon as possible, because we don't recommend issues. We don't recommend evacuation alerts or issues. We don't take that lightly. We understand it's very disconcerting to be asked to leave your home. And we do empathize with everyone who has had to leave. And we would like to thank everybody for their incredible support that we've seen from the neighboring communities. It takes everybody to get through these kinds of incidents. And yeah, it's been really uplifting to see the support in the community in this area of the province. But again, we do empathize with the people who have had to leave their home. So.
Thank you. Zara, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you for that. So just a quick question from one of my colleagues who is in Fort St. John right now, asking if we can get a total current number of people who have been ordered evacuated in the surrounding vicinity around Fort St. John, please.
Speak to that. But
Okay, I'll introduce you first because I haven't introduced him yet. This is Mike Watkins. He's our EOC director, and he has the information around the PRRD portion. The way things work is a little bit of a split. So the PRRD has some and Fort St. John has some. So do you want to?
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, hi there. So I can't give you a precise number in terms of population count. We did some GIS work last night when things calmed down a little bit at 3 a.m. and realized that we have more than 50%, 50.1% in fact, of the Peace River Regional District is currently under evacuation order or alert. So if you can find out how many people live here, you can kind of do the math. It was a substantial event last night. We have people in hotels as far away as Prince George now, just to give you some size of the scope, sense of the scope.
Thank you.
Sorry, you know what? I was on mute talking away to Ryan, and Ryan couldn't hear me. Very sorry. Ryan, do you have any updated numbers on approximate properties or number of people under alert in Fort St. John, the city?
So we have 21,000 residents. So that's how many people are under alert inside the city of Fort St. John. Obviously, we've had a couple hundred evacuees from the regional district register in Fort St. John, with the remainder of them going elsewhere.
Thank you. Zara, did you have anything else?
No, I'm okay for now. I may come pop back again later. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Grady?
Hi there. Thank you all for your time. I was wondering, has the wind direction shifted from its where it's been recently?
Hi, Grady. So yesterday we saw winds from the northeast, and those were the extreme winds gusting upwards of 60 kilometers an hour. Today, what we're seeing on site is lighter winds from 10 to 20 kilometers per hour, and those are coming from the northeast direction again. We are looking, though, when we see the warm front coming in on Thursday, moving into Friday, or as early as Wednesday evening, that the winds will shift back from the southwest.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Ashkay?
Akshay, Hannah, I had one question. Do you know how many of these big fires in the Peace River complex are human caused? You might have mentioned this before, but I just want to get an idea of how many of them were suspected to be caused by humans.
Great question. I just did look this up earlier. So we have had out of all the fires that we've had across BC since April 1st, 2023, 70% of those fires have been in the Prince George Fire Center. So majority have been in this region, and that's due to the hot and dry conditions that we're seeing here. We do have the highest fire danger in the province. And of all the fires in the province, I don't have specifics for this region, of all the fires in the province, 63% have been suspected to be human caused. So majority are human caused. That's pretty common around this time of year, just because when we do have lightning come through, generally the fuels aren't susceptible enough for the lightning to actually start a fire. So most of the time it's going to be human caused fires at this time of year that are starting these fires that we're seeing out here.
Thank you.
Spencer, do you want to go ahead? Sorry, Spencer, I think you might be, I can't hear you. Can others hear Spencer?
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, got you.
Awesome.
Yes.
All right, so I'm just curious, this question is for Hannah. Is there a concern at this time of the Stoddart Creek Fire and the Red Creek Fire merging?
There is potential for those two incidents to merge. So the Stoddart Creek Wildfire and the Red Creek Wildfire could potentially merge. It's not a concern at this time. It would actually tactically be easier to objectively fight the wildfire if it was managed as one incident. Our team is likely going to move to managing it as one incident. We're already halfway there because we are sharing resources between the two incidents already. But there is potential that those two fires could merge and turn into one larger fire.
Perfect, thank you.
Is that it for you, Spencer? Okay, Caden?
Hi there. Yeah, thanks. I guess a question for Hannah here, or yeah, I think what is the total breakdown of resources on these two complexes? I guess it's being treated as one. I know I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the call, but I didn't grab those numbers right off the hop.
No problem. So the North Peace complex, which is the Red Creek, Stoddart Creek, Boundary Lake, and Cameron River, that's the North Peace complex. So that's 4 of the incidents in the surrounding area of Fort St. John. Those fires are being managed under one incident management team. So the resources within those 4 incidents are being shared between the 4. And on site right now, we have 22 helicopters, 75 structure protection personnel, 22 pieces of heavy equipment, 40 incident management team and support staff personnel, 240 wildland firefighters, as well as, like I said, an additional unit crew arriving, or sorry, 2 additional unit crews arriving this evening. So that's an additional 40 firefighters, and then another 20 arriving tomorrow. However, it's a bit give and take at this point because we do have crews who have been here for 14 days. And so they will start to exit and head back to home to have some rest and recovery.
Perfect. If I could just follow that up. Is there an ask out there at this point to other provinces to help? Is BC getting to the point now to ask for that, or are we not there yet?
We're not quite there yet at this point in time. We do have, like I said, more resources coming as far as incident management teams go. I know there's been lots of talk about, we do have one team out in Alberta right now deployed out of province. That team does return this coming weekend to have some rest and recovery. And that being said, we do have 2 additional incident management teams in the province that are not deployed to wildfires right now who are ready to respond should there be a new evolving incident that required an incident management team to assist with the management of that wildfire. And we do have, yeah, like I said, a number of unit crews joining us now. So we're not looking at out of province support at this point in time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Spencer, is that a new question?
Yeah, this one is for you guys. I was curious, for those who have been evacuated, how are their homes being protected at this time?
So protected context.
Just generally, either through with the BCWS or, just generally from like the RCMP, just trying to get a sense of how secure their homes are at this time.
I can speak to that. So there's two elements of that. Throughout this wildfire event, as Hannah can talk to in more detail, we've had structure protection units deployed by BC Wildfire Services. These are often crews from surrounding municipalities, and when things really get heated up in the province, no pun intended, sorry, we're bringing crews from all over the province. So they've been deploying structure protection, essentially, a fancy word for sprinklers over houses to change the dynamics around those structures and protect them, and they're very effective. So there's that side of things. From an access control perspective, the evacuation order area is an area that is controlled. There's access control and traffic control surrounding it. It's a combination of our own security, RCMP, and others. And we have a permit system that permits those who have legitimate business in there, which does include BC Wildfire Service contractors, to access the area. There's also search and rescue out there, our own staff as well. So, there's a fair number of people in there. They're all people directly connected with the wildfire response itself.
Thank you. And then I just another follow-up. Are water bombers being used at this point, or fire retardant planes? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so at this point, we do have the 22 helicopters assigned to the wildfire. There is an air tanker base in Fort St. John, so we can utilize air tankers if they're required and if there's achievable objectives for them to take on. Yesterday afternoon, we did have to ground all of our air support resources just due to the heavy smoke in the area, but the good news is they're back up and they're working today, so we do have eyes in the sky. We don't have any water bombers assigned to this incident at this time, but we're making good progress with the helicopters that we do have on site, and they're supporting the ground crews.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we do have a question in the chat. So Betsy, we would have to get back to you on the number, but I did want to point to the fact that it's actually 50.1, not 51%. So there's a bit of a difference. I just want to flag that for you. As far as actual numbers, we'd have to check into that and get back to you. Does anybody else have any questions, though, for Hannah regarding the BC wildfire response and status? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to hand this over to our EOC Director, Mike, who can give you a bit of an update on the evacuations, orders, and alerts. And we have a little bit of information a couple of other agencies have asked us to share as well. So just go ahead, Mike.
All right. So bear with me while I get through all of this. I've got different things to talk about. The first thing I'd just like to reiterate is that at this time, there are no planned changes to evacuation orders or evacuation alerts. There simply hasn't been enough time for BC wildfire crews to get in, map, and investigate, so that between them and us, we can understand what the risk is in the area. So those orders and alerts are expected to continue at least for the rest of today. We evaluate this stuff constantly. We are extremely aware that everybody would like to get home as soon as it's safely possible to do so. And when it is, we'll make that happen at the earliest opportunity. For now, we're just delighted that the wind event wasn't quite as bad as it was, and the direction didn't take the fire into areas that would have been more problematic. It's probably worth talking about what evacuation alert and order actually are. I can tell from some of the calls we're getting from the public that not everybody's clear on this. So I thought I'd just take a second to talk about that. We first, generally speaking, sometimes you don't have this luxury, but generally, if we do have some heads up about a developing emergency, we'll issue an evacuation alert. And what that means is that if you're in that zone, you should prepare to leave at a moment's notice. And what does that mean? It means gather the things that you think you'll need for at least the next 3 days or 72 hours. And if prudent, if you think it's going to be a long one, perhaps a little bit longer. What do I mean by that? Things like essential items like ID, medication, supplies for your pets, special foods if you have dietary issues. And make a plan of where to go. If you have family and friends that are outside of the potential area at risk, make an arrangement so that you can travel there and be safe and comfortable. An evacuation order is a completely different thing. At that point, the relevant agencies, in this case, it's BC Wildfire Service and Peace River Regional District, we've concluded that it's not safe to be in the area from a life safety perspective. There is risk to human life. And in that case, you must leave. It's really quite simple. We're asking people to leave because we feel the risk is far too high to remain behind. I should also point out that when you're in an alert zone, we're not asking people to leave at that point. We're simply asking them to prepare. I know that anxiety can be a real problem right now with the heavy, thick smoke. We are getting calls from as far away as Dawson Creek, people who aren't even in an evacuation alert zone, wondering if they should be concerned. And that's not the case. The smoke is distressing for sure, but we manage risk and warning using these two different tools. Another question that's coming up quite a bit is for those that have been evacuated, how do they get support? And we have a program in British Columbia called Emergency Support Services. And what it is a program administered by local governments. So in our case, our local government partners are people like our organizations like Fort St. John, Dawson's Creek, Chetwynd, and as far away as Prince George. And the ESS teams there are able to provide lodging and food supports, or even some support for billeting. And what do I mean by that? If you're in an evacuation zone and you've been forced out, ordered out from your home, we can help you get lodging. We can provide food supports and other essential things to help you through that period. The way that you obtain these services is by visiting what we call a reception center. And there are reception centers stood up right now in Fort St. John, in Dawson Creek, in Chetwynd, and Prince George. In order to get the services, you need to attend there, and you'll be met by a person that meets and greets people as they come in the door, and they'll direct you to a service desk where essentially we talk to each person and try to determine what their needs are, and then help them out with what we call referrals to lodging and other supports. There's another term that we also use in ESS, and that's called registering. If you're able to be self-sufficient, if you have family and friends that you're staying with, you should still register with ESS. And what that does is it allows us to know who has evacuated from the area, and it gives us a mechanism to reach out to them should there be a need. It can also be important in times of large disasters where we can facilitate family reunification if people are split up. Registering can be done at a reception center, and we also have an online tool called ERA that we can put some links to in our public-facing webpage. It's a little bit too much to go into in this call. So that's a general overview on alerts, orders, and our ESS program. We have a great many people evacuated from the Stoddart and Red Creek fires, as well as some other fires around the district. People getting ESS support from the communities can access them at the following places. In Fort St. John, we're only accepting evacuees that were already registered. There's a critical shortage of hotels, and as the city currently is in an alert zone, it's simply not prudent to keep putting more people there. Contact number for Fort St. John, 250-794-3310. In Dawson Creek, a great many people from the Stoddart fire has traveled there, and last night we did run out of hotel rooms, and people moved on to other cities. The Dawson Creek Center is at the Mercer Hall.
It's in Ovinton.
in the Oventive Center, sorry. I have to use the term everyone else knows. Some of us call it the Mercer Center here. And you can visit them and they will complete the registration and referral process there. Availability of hotel rooms is always in flux throughout the day. And unfortunately, that's just the reality of moving so many people so quickly. So my best recommendation is that people coming out of the order area, and there are still people leaving, would first travel to Dawson Creek and attempt to find service there. If there isn't, I know there are hotel rooms in Chetwynd and Prince George. The Chetwynd ESS Center can be reached at 250-556-4173. In Prince George, there are many hotel rooms available, and their number is 778-675-3735. We'll be putting all of this information, including their hours of operation, up on our website and, very shortly. If you don't know how to find the help you're looking for, or if you have an issue that doesn't fall into what we've already talked about, the PRRD has an emergency information line that you can reach at 250-219-5210. We also have an email address you can use to send your requests to. It's emergency-info@prrd.bc.ca. Let's see. Just had the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure isn't able to join us today. They just wanted to pass on a few points. You are going to find on roads some traffic stops at times. Highway 97 near the fire was closed altogether at one point and then opened for alternating single lane traffic. And I believe its current status is that it is open to traffic, probably with speed reduction zones in place. Be careful out there, drive slowly, and if you're looking for information about roads in your area, check drivebc.ca for the most up-to-date information. I think that's all I'm going to put on that, and we will put any other relevant information on current state of roads on our website. And let me just see here. I think that's all I had for you today. We are fielding a large number of calls, but I would remind people to visit our website at prrd.bc.ca. We're trying to push as much information out through there and also on our Facebook page, which you can find the link to on our website. We want to make sure that we're getting as much accurate information out there as possible. We recognize that in a time of uncertainty, when you're away from your home, finding out information is probably the biggest need people have. Please bear with us. There hasn't yet been opportunities to do damage assessments out in the Stoddard Creek fire. That will happen, and if there are any information to share about that process, we'll be putting that out publicly at the earliest opportunity. So be vigilant, be safe, and thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you. Spencer, do you have questions?
Yeah, I was just curious. Hold on. For what's the distance away from a wildfire or time frame that it would switch from a evacuation alert to an orders?
That's really a question better directed to Hannah, but all we can say is that it's completely variable. It's based on fuel, on wind, and populations. It's not a question you can, there's no magic formula. Everything has to be looked at, at that point of time.
Hannah, would you like to add anything to Mike's response there?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add, but the recommendations for issuing evacuation alerts and orders are based on a number of factors. We do have fire behavior specialists that project growth based on various inputs, as was mentioned. So that includes wind speed, fuel type, how the fire's been behaving over the last couple of days, and then just the temperatures and those relative humidities. So lots of inputs there, but also based on populations, impacts adjacent, any kind of critical infrastructure that may be in the area, as well as any sort of resource challenges. And we're not at that point in this wildfire season, but if we are having resource challenges and unable to resource a fire, then there may be recommendations made, and it's all about life and human safety.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. And since Hannah is on there, I just wanted to flag for everyone that Hannah has posted some B-roll of the Stoddard Creek file. She's posted a link in the chat if anybody would like that. So it's B-roll for the Stoddard Creek wildfire posted in the chat. Grady, you have a question?
Thank you. For residents in the area that have livestock, are there resources available for them to shelter their animals, or is there anything that they can do in regards to their livestock and animals?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So there is a program for registered farm producers, and those folks already know who they are. If you're not a registered farm, you would obviously know you're not. It's the availability of resources really depends on what the safety considerations are in the area. If there are any farm producers out there that would like information on this program, they can call us at 250-219-5210 and reference agriculture, and we'll hook them up with the information they need.
Yeah, okay, that's the perfect process.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Grady? Or do you have any others?
Just a follow-up. So it's only this program for regular farmers that people can use to shelter their livestock. Besides that, they have to evacuate their own animals and find shelter for them on their own hair.
That is a formal program for the agriculture community, not managed by BC Wildfire or Peace River Regional District. That's a provincial level program. Other things that we've been doing out there in the field, we do have a field support team that's out there that has been assisting search and rescue and doing notifications in the order area. And we have been talking to many farmers and producers about the steps that they can take to help protect their livestock and also protect their land and also their neighbors. Sometimes simple steps like disking over a field with dry grass can make an incredible difference. And so we've had that work ongoing, and I think it's been effective, seen to be effective in some of the wildfires in BC.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mike? Okay then, can we get an update from Fort St. John, please, from Ryan?
I just wanted to say thanks for organizing this again today. The city of Fort St. John obviously remains on an evacuation alert until such a time that BC Wildfire Service has some updated modeling and some updated pieces. But apart from that, we'd obviously like to thank our residents for a fairly orderly evacuation alert issuing yesterday and making sure that they were well prepared. We've seen lots of RVs and stuff get loaded up and still sitting in people's driveways and front yards in case they need to evacuate. So we certainly appreciate that and hope that the weather, this weather window that Hannah spoke about earlier, allows the fire crews to get an upper hand.
Thank you, Ryan. Are there any questions for Ryan related to the city of Fort St. John? All right then. I'll turn it over to Shona Nelson with the Doig First Nation.
Hi, good afternoon. Doig River continues to have the evacuation order within the community. Yesterday, we evacuated approximately 150 members from 57 homes from Doig River, and overall, it went really well. We had great support from the local detachment and our EOC team, which continues to monitor this situation. We've also had security go to the Doig community on both ends, accessing the community so the members do not have to worry about people coming and going, so their homes are protected. And the big thing that we're working on right now is we have some of our EOC team in the community collecting and working to get pets that were left behind from yesterday into some locations. Most of our members are either in Fort St. John or in Dawson Creek. And Chief and Council would just like to extend their thanks to BC Wildfire Services for their exceptional work, all of our partners with the Regional District, City of Fort St. John. And we continue to monitor it and update it on our Facebook page. And yeah, we are just monitoring and doing the best that we can. And thanks to everyone that's reached out to support the community.
Thank you, Shona. Does anyone have any questions for Doig River First Nation related to Doig River? Okay, then I will turn it over to our District of Taylor representatives if you'd like to provide an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Therese. Can you hear me? Yes. First, thank you to all of you and to our wildfire personnel and emergency services personnel who are supporting the work that needs to be done on these wildfires. The District of Taylor is on alert status as of yesterday afternoon at 4 o'clock. We are issuing a water restriction, a class 3 water restriction here in the community that requires that you stop watering lawns or any extraneous use of water so that we can maintain our water reservoirs in the event that we have to fight wildfire in the community. As well, Council will be issuing a fire ban this afternoon, which will be on all category 2 and 3 fires, including campfires, so no open burning. And that fire exclusion will include Peace Island Park, which is leased by and operated by the District of Taylor. So what that means is no campfires in Peace Island Park. As well, sorry, was there a question? Okay, sorry. As well, if you are staying at Peace Island Park, or if you are planning to stay at Peace Island Park, we would ask you to please call us before you come. We have reservations that extend all through the weekend, and we want to make sure that we have space for all the people who are being evacuated or who need evacuation support. If you are on alert, please don't come to Peace Island Park. If you are on order, we would like you to check in with your ESS reception center before you come to us. The phone number is posted on the website, or we are happy to provide it in a press release to anyone else who might need it.
That is great. Thank you so much, Moira. Are there any questions for the District of Taylor? Spencer, please go ahead.
Hi, sorry, this question is actually for Ryan with the City of Fort St. John. It reminded me of because they were talking about the fire ban. I'm curious if the City of Fort St. John will be instituting a fire ban as well in the area.
Thanks for the question, Spencer. The City of Fort St. John will not be issuing a fire ban at this time. Obviously, category 2 and 3 wildfires are not permitted in the Prince George region, but within the City of Fort St. John, you are still able to have a small cooking fire in your backyard.
Does anyone else have any questions for our District of Taylor? Okay, then I'm just going to open it up one more time. Does anyone have any questions that they came here to ask, but they have not had that chance to ask it yet? Well, then, if that's it, I believe this is a wrap. Thank you, everybody. Thank you especially to, I know how busy all of our various agencies are, so thank you for taking the time to provide this briefing. And thank you also to the media for helping us get the word out. It's very appreciated. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.